been doing civil engineering stuff for 20+ years, so background. And we've been with LiDAR ourselves here at SSI since 2011, so about eight years. So not entirely sure how much people know about using LiDAR in Microstation without using third-party tools. There's quite a few of them. Some quick things to know is, I don't know if you understand what LiDAR means, but LiDAR is light detection and ranging. And it's originated as far as back as World War II, but they stopped doing a lot of research on it because of sonar and radar, mostly due to the war. So they kind of put the kibosh to it. And then back in the 60s and 70s, they kind of reinvented it and come back to life with it. So as far as what Bentley has, I mean, they have a couple other tools that they use outside of Microstation. There's a pod creator that's free through Bentley's website that you can download. If you don't have that, you can convert LAS file or any of your files you get from your LiDAR providers. And then they also have a couple other tools here. They're called point tools. There's a Bentley point tools, which is more of a pay product depending on your package that you have. It's a good viewer and you can do some cleanup on it. And there's also Point Tools View, which is a nice viewer where you can load LiDAR files in it and then overlay it with, say, shape files and AutoCAD files, which I'm not entirely sure why they do that. And that's this particular view right here. Not sure why I say they don't do DGNs, but they do DXFs, DWGs, shape files that you can overlay with your LiDAR and take measurements inside it, add sticky notes, and then make saves and share it with other clients. So that being said, I will show you quickly what Pod Creator is. So pod file is essentially just the file format that Microstation is able to read. And in this program here, you can add multiple files. So we'll say I have all these different files right here I wanted to load in. It would populate this, and then you can change it and change the units. So you gotta be careful. By default, it's always gonna come as metric. So if your project's in feet or US survey feet, you wanna change that right away. And you can also do some filtering here where you can space out your LiDAR. So if these files are, say, 5 gig files or 10 gig files you're getting, you can space these things out a little bit and thin them down. And you have some options about picking in your intensities and your RGB values and classifications as well. This program works well because you can do multiple files all at one time and then save them out. And then also, another way of doing this is right inside Microstation itself. So if you've never brought in a pod file before into Microstation, there's this little green brain thing up here. If you click that, that's how you bring in LiDAR files. So, like I said before, you can also convert files inside here as well. So you can just click on that convert, and then you can bring in all your different files as well, whether it's LAS, PTS, whatever, from all your different providers. But this one will only let you do one file at a time when you're doing it. So with that, once you have a file that you know you want, we got a pod file, so we're going to just load an example here real quick. And it brings them in fairly fast, so by default, it's always going to look pretty bad when it comes in. And there's different ways of changing the views. You have under here, you have a settings button where you can click on presentation, and it brings up a pick box. Or you can do it this way under your view attributes if you bring it up. You're going to get this added on after you load a pod file. And then here you can change your displays. So you can see your LiDAR, whether it's in color. You don't like color, you can change the intensity values so you can see it just in gray shades. And if you have a file that's actually classified, which I can show you that as well. This file is classified here, which you're going to get from a lot of aerial LiDAR providers. So classified LiDAR, if you've worked with it before, it's essentially layered out LiDAR. So you're going to get essentially like AutoCAD or Microstation layers built inside it. So if you were to spin this around, you would be able to see like the trees and everything else, and then you can start turning off layers. And be left just with, say, the ground right there. Another good thing with this is you can also change it to elevation view. And what that is essentially you're turning this into a contour view. So this depth right here is what's going to change your contour intervals. So say you wanted 1 foot intervals. You can see your LiDAR where all the depressions are. So, I mean, you can use it for, low spots, whatever you want. So, another thing you can do with these pod files, let me bring this road back in here. Here now you can see the roadway with the crown points and everything. You could also, these things are fully snappable, these pod files. So right here you can see that there, you get options where you can anchor these things so you can move it, lock it. These are your snaps that you can hold. So say you had a LiDAR project that you wanted to extend onto and you didn't want to send surveyors back out and you had these files that were provided back to you. You could easily just re-extract right off of these things and draw out your, say, additional roadway. And you can detach it, and then now you got 3 lines for your roadways. And with that, you can also build your surfaces up with that. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can build it from elements. Now you have a surface with just from the couple lines you extracted, say you wanted to extend it from your old survey. Or you can do this as well, where you load this, say, this whole road in, and say you only wanted just this little bit. Here you have cropping tools as well, where you can do this clip. And sorry, this thing I can't see because I got a box right in the way. So you get options right here, where you can do, say, cross sections, orient it by a block or a slab, or say even a boundary, like a shape. So you only wanted to add this little bit. You can crop out the LiDAR and you just left with your roadway. And then with that, you can also export it out just to make it a smaller file. And you click on this, and then you have different format options. So say you wanted to make it a smaller pod file, You have options whether you want the whole file or the clip file. And then right in here, you can change. So say you don't want this thing being super dense. So like, depending on your LiDAR provider, like for this instance here, like our files that we have from our mobile scan, we're shooting 2 million points a second. So this is pretty dense. So say you wanted to make this a little bit smaller, you can export this out as a clip boundary and then say make the density down 30% of that particular density. And you can just call it say thin, and it exports out. And now you have a file that was 265 gig, now it's only 2.5 meg that you can bring in. And with that, you can create surfaces right from these pod files in. You can just, once you have it a point cloud attached, you can just create from point cloud right here. And when you get that, you'll get an option here, and then you have filter options. So say you don't want to use the whole thing, you can thin it out by vertical differences or like a range of points. So say we didn't want anything that was sticking up over a tenth. You can say run this test filter, and you can see it reduces it by 98%. You can just hit import. And then now you have a surface right from your LiDAR without having to extract anything or add anything out. So if you had, say, aerial LiDAR that was classified over like a square mile, you could turn everything off and just the ground filter or your ground layer, and then build a surface directly from that. Then you also have an option up here. So if you already had a surface and you're just adding on from a street or like this, adding onto it, you can just click this append portion here, and then you would append it, say, from your existing surface. Other things you can do with this LiDAR is, I'm going to bring up another drawing here. Sorry, it's taking so long. So I have a pod file attached that happen to have a bridge in it. So like I mentioned before, you can do some cropping. So say you wanted to cut a cross section on this bridge, define your width, and then rotate it, and then you have there you go. You have underclearances that you can take measurements off from. So you can take your measurements anywhere you want from any of these beams. My unit's probably set funny right now, so this dimension isn't quite right, but and you can remove your clip boundary, go back to normal. Another good thing with the pod file is, I mean, if you're looking for different things, is uses is as like an ITS camera, or say like this particular pole here, it's sticking up. Say you wanted to understand where you can put a camera position. You can go under your visualization tools and then set up a camera. They say you thought you'd pick a camera here, so I want a wide angle camera. I want to set it there, but I want it to look over the highway. Of course, it's not going to work. this would be where that camera would be positioned off on that pole, so you can see if you happen to have any obstructions, whether it's a tree or anything else. So you could potentially say move that ITS tower, move it down the road so you can get a better view. So for those who don't happen to have Microstation or Geopak, there is other ways of making surfaces inside from the LiDAR files, or at least a mesh at that. That is, and say I have all this aerial LiDAR here. What you can do is, I showed before, you can turn off all these layers so you're left with just ground. And say you wanted to make a surface because you had a boundary survey up in this particular corner. You can crop out, say, this corner. And this is, say, if you're working just with Microstation, you didn't happen to have Geopak where you have surface tools. You can crop out your LiDAR here and export it out. And then change it to an XYZ file. And then change your filter again to your clip boundary. And say you wanted to make this 50% of all these points, so you're not making real dense triangles. And you export out a file right there. You can get rid of this file here. And then under Tools, Dimensions, and then your XYZ tools, you have an import coordinates. And it's going to default to text files again. Say, we'll bring in this XYZ file and hit process.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
While this is processed, and here's a question: are these tools the same in Power Geopak versus Power Inroads SS4?
Yes, it's essentially the same exact tools in the inroads and as well as in open roads as well.
Okay.
They're just hidden in different spots, but as far as like the LiDAR tool, like the pod thing with the little brain thing, it's pretty much in the same areas. It's like under your same toolboxes in open roads or
Okay, thanks.
in there. So essentially what I did here now is I just brought in a pod file, which I turned into essentially a whole lot of points. And these are just Microstation points. So then what you can do is go under surface modeling. Say you wanted to make a surface, say, into this corner here again. You just select all your points. And then down here you have meshing. You can create meshes from points. And I'll ask if you want to keep everything original and just whether you want to keep the points or not. You just hit generate this. And depending on obviously the size and how fast it's going to go, but so it's just going to turn all your points into a wire mesh, so you essentially just have the same like old .tin files that you would create back in the day and have a triangle file. And you can do that, say, within Microstation without having to have a Geopak or an open roads or an inroads product as well. Let's see, it's right there. Now you're up back to the mesh. So without going into really third-party software, I mean, Microstation, its tools are fairly basic. I mean, that's really all you really have. You go inside of it and say they have, I mean, the Point Tools viewer is a really nice option that's free, that you can say load these pod files and then overlay CAD files on top of it and make the notes. And then there's the Point Tools program itself. Say depending on your Microstation subscription, that one you might get dinged for, but you can do some cleanup, let's say, on these pod files. So say if they're real noisy, you can trim out stuff and clean it up and make fly-throughs. So that's essentially all I really have. I'm not sure if there's any questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, just put it in the chat window.
I know I went kind of fast, so. I cannot see a chat window, so.
Yeah. Nobody's chatting anything at this time.
Okay.
All right, somebody's asking if you could show more of the pod creator.
The pod creator, yep. So in the pod creator, there isn't a whole lot of options in here, but like I said, say you downloaded a whole bunch of LiDAR from an aerial provider or the USGS site. This particular program is going to give you a little bit more options as opposed to the one built in within Microstation. So when you add files, your types of files, you're going to have one big one, which is this one right here, this LAZ. LAZs are just compressed LAS files, and your LAS and your E57s are going to be your big ones that come from out of your normal providers. The LAZ is going to be compressed. So like we do a lot of compressed files, so we'll make LAZs because it saves a lot of space. But when you bring them in, let me see here, I can just find a file real quick. They wanted to bring in these 5 files. It'll populate here. And you can change, say, your units now. So if these were in feet, you can convert them to metric or US survey feet. But let's say convert it to feet. And then if they were colorized, you want to keep the colorization in here. You want to keep your intensity values, which is going to be your big one. Or you can auto scale it. It's got classifications. You can check that. And say you wanted to if you wanted to thin these files out because they were really big, you can enable this uniform filter and then change your spacing. And what that's essentially going to do is kind of reorganize your points and thin it out. And it's going to ask you for a name. Then you can hit test. And then this is going to create everything into a single one that you have all these. Or you can uncheck that and then it'll create an individual pod. And just hit create and it'll start processing. So it all say depends on the file size, how long it takes, but it does take a little bit of time. I mean, but that's usually with our files on our end, but I'm dealing with 2 gig, 3 gig files. If you deal with USGS files, you can get, say, a 50 gig file that's a square mile, and it might only take 10 seconds to convert it over to a pod format.
Somebody else is asking, are you able to draw smart lines in a section view of the cloud? For instance, are you able to slice the cloud along an alignment?
Yep. So, get out of this particular drawing. So when you cut a cross section, everything is still fully snappable, like I said. So, I mean, you can cut a cross section of a bridge and then still draw lines right down it and extract, say, your bridge deck or extract beams. everything's still going to be exactly the same. The only caution to the wind with doing this is, like I said, every single point in a pod file is fully snappable. So, I mean, if you got a lot of tree overhang over, say, like a rural roadway, you got to be careful where you're snapping your lines to, because it's going to snap to the top of a tree or. By default, it always comes in without anything here. So, I mean, they say if it was colorized or intensity, you can get this. Say you wanted to make cross section like this. So you can still see. And you can extract your paint lines, and then still they can draw underneath the bridge as well, so you can cut it the other way and cut the deck off. If you didn't like the position of this, you can unanchor it and then move your whole pod file off to the side. Bad extraction there, but so. Any other questions?
Did it answer your question, Brandon? What else did you need clarified, Brandon? Said he was hoping for small slices that could be advanced along stationing.
So, like clipping like along an alignment, is that kind of what we're thinking?
Yeah.
I mean, you can, so, I mean, there's no automatic way of clipping, say like every 50 feet. But if you had an alignment brought in, yes, you could snap to your, I mean, right across it. So, I mean, say just like this, and then you could save these slices out. So you can just do your export and then just click on this and then save it as a pod, and then your region filter, you're going to change it as a clip. I mean, if you want to keep this whole density, you can leave it as 100 and then save these as individual pods. So say at station 10, 50, 40, I mean, however, and then rebring these pod files back in. And then they're going to be a way smaller then. So, I mean, depending on, say, if you got 100-foot cross sections you're doing or whatever, and then you can just reload these pod files. I mean, depending on your computer speed, you can load a lot of pod files without blowing it up. I mean, this is an older laptop here, so it's by far anything impressive. I mean, I can load probably 20 gig worth of glass files, and it won't bog your computer out too much. I mean, you're going to pan around, and it's going to have the little lag time when it's catching up like that, how it pixelates. And then, but after that, I mean, you're fine. You can still draw lines, and it's not going to affect anything.
Yeah, that answered his question.
Okay.
I got a question. Is LiDAR your primary source for picking up topo nowadays, or do you still do traditional survey?
We still do traditional. I mean, depending on the LiDAR we use, I mean, we have UAVs and then we have mobile LiDAR, and we also have terrestrial scanners as well. But say, I mean, from the roadway, I mean, if we drive down the roadway and you get into situations like this where, I mean, this grass is fairly thin, but if this grass was really thick and we know you're not going to penetrate it with our LiDAR, we'll conventionally pick that up as well. Say other options, I mean, you can just say extract all the hard surface out with the mobile LiDAR, and then I've taken aerial LiDAR from, say, from the USGS sites, downloaded that, and then merged my surfaces in the background so I have a full ground tin, you know, where I can cover, you know, 2,000 feet either way of the roadway, and merge surfaces that way as well.
Okay, and if you do pick up the survey in LiDAR, how long is the process, and what is the process of giving a topo file, you know, edge of pavement lines, everything else, to the client? Is that a long, drawn-out process?
Nope. I mean, essentially, I mean, I don't extract from the pod files, you know, as a whole project. I mean, this is great. Say if you're going to do some additional pickup or try to utilize it for stuff like this, we use TopoDot, and essentially you're doing the same thing as what I was just showing. Is, I mean, we're essentially looking at this LiDAR file and you're tracing out lines and then draping them down to the cloud after the fact, and then I take those lines and then, I mean, I can convert them over to where it looks like a traditional survey, so every vertice down there looks like a point node, and create your file. So, I mean, when you get it, like in an MDOT project, I mean, you're going to get it and you're never going to know the difference besides the point density of our extracted line work.
So you're physically tracing a line over this LiDAR file?
Yep. So, I mean, we can load, say, a mile worth of LiDAR, and you're tracing out, you're just drawing these lines out two-dimensionally, and then I can drape those at any interval you want, whether it's 6 inches, 10 feet, 100 feet, and it'll drop a node every 100 foot down that, right, snapping it right to the LiDAR file. So say you can't always just use a view like that. You might have to change it to a contour view, so you're not missing say a crown point that was in the center line, and you're drawing an extra break line down these. But I mean, you can draw 2D lines, you know, as fast as you can click. So I mean, you can draw a mile of 2-lane roadway in 10 minutes, and then have it draped at 5-foot intervals and create a surface like, I mean, like you couldn't pick out in the field, you know, or it'd take them 3 days. I could have it done in 20 minutes.